It is respecting your elders. That's what we've been told for many years. So it's teaching your kids how to show respect when the world does not. And we are definitely in a world that does not show respect right now. And it's very sad. The American flag, for example, used to be such a sign of respect, and when it passed, people stood up and they put their hand over their heart. And in 1989, flag burning was labeled as legal as a form of freedom of speech. Babies used to be viewed as a precious gift from God, but in the famous case Roe versus Wade in 1973, women were given the right to abort their babies. And of course today it's gotten even worse, and it is legal all the way up until they're born. Police officers used to be showed honor as they held a position of protector in our community. Little boys looked up to police officers in awe, and police officer was one of the top 3 jobs that little boys wanted. Today, disrespect for them is so high that in many parts of the country they cannot fill the positions. Children used to say, "Yes, ma'am," "No, ma'am," "No, sir," "Yes, sir." People actually make fun of my kids for saying that to us as the parents. We were in a grocery store several years ago, and I had one of my older kids was small at the time, and I had them say "yes, ma'am" to someone, and a lady actually came up to me and said, "I can't believe you make your kids do that." It's come a long way, and today I hear many kids call their parents by their first name. My kids know they better not ever do that, or I'm not answering. And it's just sad. We've lost that respect for parents. We've lost those good manners. I talked to an exterminator who came to our house a couple months ago, and we talked for about 30 minutes, and he said he was a teacher. He retired after almost 30 years. He said, "I can't take the disrespect anymore." He said, "My high schoolers sleep in class, they don't do their work, they don't listen, they use profanity in front of me, they get in my face and yell at me." He said, "I can't take the disrespect." That never would have been allowed. You know, when I was growing up, of course, principals still gave licks if you got sent to the principal. My parents made it very well known if I ever got in trouble at school, I'd get it twice as bad at home. Rising generations now seem to have, and I know you've heard this word so much, it's that entitlement that seems to be all over our society. That entitlement that says, "I didn't do anything wrong, it's someone else's fault," and also that I deserve everything I want. That is entitlement, and it is everywhere. Even with police officers. Police officers will pull people over for breaking the law, and people will argue with them and say, "I didn't do anything, you can't hold me accountable, you can't do anything to me." It's hard to even have that position of authority. Why would we do that to people who are there to protect us and make our community better? Makes no sense. So what has happened to respect? You know, the dictionary, I thought this was interesting, says that respect is a feeling of deep admiration for someone or something elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements. God's definition is very different. God did not say to respect people who have earned it through achievements or abilities. Let's look at his word and see what he did say. Regarding authority, Romans 13, 1-2 says, "Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God." This is a tough one today. We have so much unrest and upheaval in the government, and it's hard sometimes to remember that God put that there, and we still need to show respect to that. David knew that, didn't he? Saul was trying to kill him, and yet he still respected him and he was subject to him. Children need to be taught to be respectful of those in authority. Even if they don't like them, they should respect the position. Regarding the elderly, Leviticus 19:32 says, "Stand up in the presence of the elderly and show respect to the aged." And 1 Peter 5:5 says, "You who are younger, be subject to your elders." You know, we live in a society where older people are kind of disregarded, and that's a shame because they are funny and sweet and smart and have so much wisdom to give those who are younger. We need to teach our children to embrace that and to appreciate those in the older generation. This one is for us wives. You know what I'm going to read. Ephesians 5:33 talks about the husband loving his wife as himself, and then it says, "And let the wife see that she respects the husband." This command does not mean respect your husband if he is amazing and deserves it or has earned it. We are to do that because of God's command. What are the greatest two commands? First one, love the Lord God with all your heart and your mind, your soul, and your strength. The second one is love your neighbor as yourself. If we all did this, then we wouldn't have the disrespect that we have present right now. So let's look at this and how it applies to parenting. How do we teach our kids to be respectful? Well, according to a psychologist, William Damon, he said respect for the parent who exercises proper authority leads to respect for legitimate social institutions and respect for the law. So let that sink in. The child's respect for you is going to be transferred when they grow up to how they respect other authority figures. He goes on to say, the single most important legacy that comes out of the child's relationship with the parent is respect. And I read that and I thought, no, that's not the most important. The most important is to teach about God and to be a servant of God and to love God. But you know what? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that what has to be at the beginning, it has to be respect for God. If you want your kids to accept Him, to live for Him, to obey Him, they have to have respect for Him or it will not come. It will not happen. So respect really is the most important. It is the first thing we need to teach. So how do we leave that legacy of respect? First of all, remember, it begins in the walls of your home. That's where it begins. Quite simply, if you disrespect your kids or other people, then they will also. If you show respect to them and to other people, they will also. So what are some actual active steps we can do to teach this respect? Number one is to practice positive gossip. You say, well, wait, gossip is wrong. All I mean by that is say kind things about other people. Practice saying kind things. Just like the old Bambi movie, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. Improper grammar emphasized there. Say kind things. They really will hear what you say. If you talk negatively about people and you're rude, they're going to hear that and they're going to think it's okay. So we don't want them to hear that from our mouths. Number two is to call your kids out for disrespectful behavior. So many kids, I hear them everywhere I go, are rude to their parents and they're disrespectful and they throw a fit and they demand certain things. And the more surprising part is a lot of parents give in to that. They don't hold them accountable to be respectful. And guess what? This applies to toddlers. It also applies to preteens and teenagers. I've heard a lot of people say, well, she's a teenage girl, she's hormonal, she's going through a lot, it's normal, she'll get out of it. No, there is no excuse to ever be disrespectful to you as a parent. You call them on it immediately and you say, that is not allowed. You may say that in a respectful way. or you don't listen, and you definitely don't give in to what they're wanting. Make that a requirement. They really will follow what you say. I only have 2 girls out of all my kids, but they both tried that teenage girl attitude. It took one time. And when you make sure they know it's not allowed, then they know the boundaries and they're not going to do it. And my teenage daughter's back there. She's precious and sweet and thoughtful, and she's almost 16. So it can happen. Don't let anyone tell you that they're going to be rude when they're teenage girls. All right, get off my soapbox for that. All right, number 3 is to encourage activities that promote respect. And one easy thing to do, is very simple, is to play board games. Have you ever thought about that? You have to take turns. You have to have an order. And you have to learn not to be a sore loser, because sometimes you lose. Okay? So it's a really simple way to teach respect. Number 4 is kids need to know it's okay to make mistakes. This is something I really thought a lot about, and I hadn't put much thought into it before. But when kids feel free to make mistakes, when they know that you still love them and you're going to work through whatever that mistake is, that creates that respect for them. It goes a long way. Number 5 is to be patient with your kids and to be patient in other situations. For example, we've all probably been in line at the grocery store. You're in a hurry, you're trying to get home and make dinner, and the woman in front of you has 147 coupons that she has to have scanned for her order, right? So if that happens to you, and it probably will if it hasn't, don't get upset and frustrated. Think of it as an opportunity to teach your children about patience. You know, if it's okay if you get home 10 minutes later. It's not going to be the end of the world, but that lesson you show your kids by treating that woman with kindness and being patient can go a long way, a long way. It's a value that they can remember their whole life. Number 6 is to be consistent, okay? Doesn't this go with everything we ever teach, right? Consistency is a challenge, and it's very important. And we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. We're not perfect parents. We're not perfect people. But we need to do our best to show respect to all people, not just certain ones. Many people, especially right now, don't like the president or the government that we have. Many people didn't like the last president. Many people didn't like the president before that. You will always have people that don't like the president, right? That's just the nature of humanity. So it's really important to watch what you say around kids. Your kids, your grandkids, any kids that you're around. Be careful not to badmouth those presidents. We try really hard with our kids we might talk about an issue and say, we don't agree with this, but we always make sure we teach them that we respect the position even when we don't like the person or we don't agree with what they're saying. Again, David is a perfect example of this. He respected Saul not because he deserved it. Saul was showing a tremendous amount of stupidity, lack of wisdom, immaturity, whatever you want to call it. David respected him because he was the anointed king, and he knew God put him there. You know, we don't often think about it, but it's the same for us. God is in control. He has not left that control. You know, we talk about our government being out of control and our world being out of control. No, God is still in control. And we need to remember that. And just like David respected Saul as the king, we likewise need to respect those in authority, those government figures. Number 7 is to make consequences or punishment fit the crime. Does that make sense? If your child, for example, is rude to a friend that came over to play, then that needs to be taken away. That friend needs to be sent home, and perhaps that child can write a note of apology later or go over and apologize in person. But here's a very important thing. Listen to this phrase. Kids need to learn that being disrespectful hurts them. Because we're in a world where we hear it and people are trying to hurt others by that disrespect. If we can teach our kids that it hurts them to be disrespectful, they're much more likely to think before they say things and before they do things. When you're on a highway and somebody cuts in front of you, it's really easy to get upset and say a few words or cut them off or speed up or whatever, especially for our husbands. Probably not as hard for us. It tends to be a guy thing, right? But let them in. Let them in graciously and don't be upset about it. Our kids see that. They see everything you do. When you see someone with a veteran's cap on, go thank them for their service. McKenna and I did this. We were in Walmart one day, and there was an older gentleman putting up carts and greeting people. And we just went and talked to him for a little bit. We said, thank you for your service. And we just said, passing things about the weather or whatever it was. And we said goodbye, and we started walking away. And he called after us and said, thank you for talking to me. And it really impacted McKenna. She's like, that's sad that people don't talk to him, that he would want to thank us for that. And so we need to look for those opportunities to show that respect. It's sad how little respect veterans get today. People don't even appreciate what they've done or even living in this country that has all the freedoms that we have. Another thing that I like to do is go up to police officers if they're in a restaurant or a grocery store and thank them for their service. And I know many of you probably do that as well. First of all, I want them to hear positive words. They hear so much negativity in the world and so much hatred towards them. So I want them to hear something positive. And I also want my kids to see that. I want my kids to have that heart that they would want to go and do that. There are so many things that we can do. We need to look for ways to model that respect. In fact, that's kind of the summary of all of the points that I made, is to just model respect. That's the best way our kids will pick up on it and have that. And here's another important thing. I really like this. We should teach our kids to show respect to others even when people don't deserve it, because it is not a reflection of that person's character, but of the one showing it. So it really shows your character. And I would like to end this talk with a poem. It's called Respect Is. Respect is a consideration for others. Remember, we are all sisters and brothers. Respect is putting others ahead of ourselves, thinking less of me and myself. Respect is showing manners that are good and loving others in our neighborhood. Respect is compassion for all, whether they are rich or poor, big or small. Respect is kindness that is shown, doing it happily without a groan. Respect is demonstrating dignity for those, even for those who might impose. Respect is being courteous too. It is how you live. It is what you do. Okay. All right. So I kept that somewhat short tonight. I didn't know how long our other stuff would go. So do you want to cut that off?